Okay, guys, welcome back to the Wrestling is Art YouTube channel. And today's video is top 20 worst WWE finishers of all time by Tap Out Corner. Here we go, guys. Let's get on into it.
These are the top 20 worst WWE finishers of all time. Starting at number 20, John Morrison, Starship Pain. Alright, let me be clear. The Starship Pain looks absolutely amazing. The fact that John Morrison
Absolutely agree. It looks so cool, and I agree. It's weird to be a finisher, but it's cool. Like I have a little nostalgia towards it, and he should have been at least one-time world champ. Let's move on. But I can understand this one.
Morrison's able to do this is awesome, but the impact is where this finisher really lacks. So often, it looked like Jomo just barely hit his opponent. Even when the move did connect properly, it lacked the serious impact a finisher should have. Again, Starship Pain is a thing of beauty, but it's a prime example of a finisher that focuses on style rather than substance. Number 19, the Ultimate Warrior, Warrior Splash. Now, WWE and wrestling in general were different in the 1980s. Even still, that's not good enough defense for one of the biggest stars had such a weak-looking finisher. The Ultimate Warrior's Warrior Splash just felt really underwhelming. Since
I
Warrior's
understand
butt
this
was
one.
lying on the mat, they couldn't really sell it. On top of that, Warrior's hands and or knees would often hit the mat first, minimizing the impact. If the splash had been performed from the middle or top rope, it would have looked a lot better. As it is though, the Warrior Splash was a real flop. Number 18, John Cena, STF. Some people say Cena's attitude adjustment isn't a good finisher. I don't agree, especially when his submission finisher is garbage. The move itself is actually great, but the way John Cena specifically does it is terrible. The majority of the time, it looks like the opponent is in more pain due to Cena's arms pushing against the side of their head than Cena choking them out. It's unfortunate too, because there are times where Cena would perform the STF really well. I'm not sure if John Cena loosened his hold to make it safer or what, but the STF should have GTFA. Number 17, Chris Benoit, Diving Headbutt. Not only is Chris Benoit controversial, but so is his finisher, the Diving Headbutt. The move can have some serious health risks if it's botched. However, on top of all that, the move just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like Starship Pain, the Diving Headbutt looks spectacular, but why would you hit your opponent with your head? One, that only dishes out a limited amount of damage, and second, are you going to hurt yourself as much, if not more, than your opponent? The diving headbutt just never made sense, and yet it's still being used to this day. Number 16, MVP, Playmaker. MVP is a cool wrestler, but his finisher was
Okay, me growing up watching MVP, and now that you have to have so much. Your opponent, has to really time it well. Really time it well. But I have too much nostalgia for it to call it a top 20 worst finishers of all time, but I understand it. I understand it.
kind of dorky. Not only did it look silly, but it didn't look like it really hurt MVP's opponent either. Sometimes it actually looked like MVP hurt his knee more than the person.
I agree, especially that way that lands on your knee. Yeah, I can understand why it could look worse on MVP, like more painful on MVP. I can understand that one. Yeah, I see it. I really do. Let's keep going.
Taking the move. Now, Randy Orton used the same move as his finisher early in his career, but at least he quickly ditched it. MVP, on the other hand, has continued to use the playmaker for his entire WWE career. Number 15, Toxic Attraction, Toxic Shock. Moving on to tag team finishers, Gigi Joel and JC James' Toxic Shock was shockingly bad. Similar to John Cena's STF, the Toxic Shock isn't inherently a bad move. It's Dolan and James' execution that wasn't good. More often than not, Gigi or JC would miss their kick or just not make a solid connection, causing the move to look awkward. Again, the idea of the finisher is good, but when you're constantly having trouble executing it properly, it's time to stop using it. Number 14, the Mountie, two-handed choke slam. Now the two-handed choke slam is an awesome finisher. Wrestlers like the Great Khali and Omos have made it work. However, both of those guys were 7 feet or taller. The Mountie, on the other hand, was just over 6 feet. That means his two-handed choke slam didn't look nearly as impactful. Mountie's opponent was usually running when he hit it too, making the move look awkward as well. It's surprising that the Mountie caught any man with this finishing move. Number 13, Fantasio, underwear swipe. In 1995, WWE fans were introduced to Fantasio, a magician turned wrestler. As you'd expect, Fantasio had a pulling their underwear off and then rolling them up for the pin. I gotta be honest, this might be the most creative finishing move ever. You know, if Fantasia debuted in the Attitude Era, they would have had him do this finisher to all the women. Unfortunately, we never got to see Fantasia pull this trick on The Undertaker or anything because he disappeared after his debut match. Number 12, Alicia Fox, Officer Nasty. Say what you will about Alicia Fox, she spent 17 years as a WWE wrestler. That's even more amazing when you see her finisher. Fox ended matches by doing a somersault leg drop that she called Officer Nasty. It's an impressive athletic move, but it didn't look powerful at all. The main issue was that Alicia's opponent was already on the mat, meaning they couldn't really sell it. Fox thankfully only used Officer Nasty as her finisher for about 2 years before only making it a signature move. Also, what kind of name is Officer Nasty? Number 11, Battle Cat, Feline Antics. If you've never heard of Battle Cat, then you aren't missing much. This feline made its WWE debut in 1990 and only had 3 televised matches before calling it quits. The character was only going to go so far, but Battle Cat's finisher didn't do himself any favors. Cat would run around his opponent, pounce on them, get it, like a cat, and then cover for the pin. That's all there was to it. I guess it was Battle Cat's knees that were supposed to be hitting his opponent, but it never looked that way. Maybe he could have perfected it if he had been around longer, but I think Feeling Antics was dead on arrival. Number 10, Gigi Dolan, Gigi Driver. This video isn't meant to be an attack on Gigi Dolan, but she's had some bad finishers. This one really isn't even a finisher, it's just a fancy looking roll-up. I guess Gigi is supposed to be hitting her opponent with such momentum that it causes them to get knocked out, or something, but it doesn't look that way. Mr. Perfect had a similar type of finisher, but he would hoist his opponent into the air and send them crashing onto the mat. Dolan just pushes her opponent down, and that's it. Number 9, the Bushwhackers, the Battering Ram. Another tag team finisher, and this one is pretty bad. One of the Bushwhackers would grab the other in a headlock and then ram them into their opponent. The attack might have been fine as a signature move, but it lacked the explosiveness needed for a finisher. It wasn't even that fun or entertaining to watch, making it underwhelming and easily forgotten. Number 8, Naomi, Rear View. Some wrestlers use their fists, some use their feet. Naomi, on the other hand, uses her butt. I'll give it this, the rear view is different, but not a good different. The former WWE Women's Tag Team Champion smacked her opponents in the face with her backside and then covered them for the 1-2-3. As a fun signature move, the rear view would have worked great, but as a finisher, it's butt ugly. Number 7.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Tap Out Quarter. I agree. It's a weaker finisher. I give it a B for creativity because at least it's creative. I do agree it could have been like a signature to set up something else, but I think it was creative enough where some people, and even me, I was like, okay, I'm fine with it. It's not the greatest finisher in the world, but it's interesting. It's interesting. So let's continue on. But it was interesting. I thought it was very good in the way of creativity. But let's continue on.
Bastion Booger, Trip to the Batcave. This is one of the sickest WWE finishers ever, and I do not mean that in a positive way. Booger would sit on his opponent with his crotch dangerously close to his opponent's mouth. Yokozuna and Rikishi.
I'd just tap out then. If I'm being dead honest, at that point, I'm tapping out. Please get out of my face. I don't want to be. Did I put that near my face? I cannot handle it. Please stop here. Please, sir. Please stop. I do not need this in my life. And that's a weird finisher. And I agree. It's in the top 5 for me. That's weird. I've never seen it. That's a weird finisher. And that is what she said.
Had finishers where they sat on.
Sorry for that. That was weird.
On their opponent, but they landed on their opponent's torso, and it looked like it hurt. Bastion Booger was so close to his opponent's face that not only did it look perverted, but it also looked like he was doing little to no damage. A disgusting finisher for a disgusting wrestler. I guess it's a match made in heaven. No, wait, that was his Friar Ferguson gimmick. Number 6, Kizarny, Double Arm DDT. Anyone remember Kizarny? Probably not, because
The only reason I remember him is because he was outlandish as a kid. That appearances that I've seen from him, and I remember the vignettes as a kid, I was like, who is this? Okay, the idea was interesting. The execution was ugly. Ugly. That's what I'm going to say. Execution was not the greatest. But I will say, okay, this is going to be weird for people. My favorite scary character of all time, is the Boogeyman. Okay? And I know some people didn't see it or not as fond of it, but as a kid, seeing Boogeyman, he creeped me out as a kid, as a young kid. And then I was like, man, this guy's cool. You know what I mean? His worms, everything, man. Yeah, he was he was crazy cool. Like the Boogeyman was. The execution for Kazarni, not so good. Let's continue.
His WWE career only consisted of 2 televised matches, and one of them was a battle royal. As such, we only got to see his finisher once, but even that was too much. Kazarni would hook his opponent's arms and hit a DDT. It was a lot like Dean Ambrose's Dirty Deeds, but instead, Kazarni would roll through and hold his opponent's arms down to the mat. It just lacked any real excitement and just looked odd. Thankfully, no one had stolen it. Number 5, Everrise, French Connection. If this is the first time you're hearing about Everrise, I don't blame you. The team was in WWE for over 2 years, from 2019 to 2021, but never made it to the main roster, and was relegated to NXT and 205 Live. There are probably several reasons for that, but one thing they definitely need to work on was their finisher. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. Everrise's finishing move was called the French Connection. Chase Parker and Matt Martel would lift their opponent into the air and have their opponent hit either the top rope or the turnbuckle. Yes, this actually got them the win. This just barely qualifies as an offensive move, and these guys are using it as a finisher? I know Everrise didn't win a ton of matches, but nobody looked at this and said, hey, maybe you guys should change your finisher. Number 4, Veto, dress code. This finisher is on another level. A negative one. In 2006, Vito started appearing on SmackDown wearing a dress. This character would never fly today, but it was a different time. Anyways, to play up the cross-dressing character, Vito got a new finisher, the dress code. Vito would shove his opponent's head under his dress, lock their arm, and start shaking. Most men would tap out within seconds, but can you blame them? The dress code is honestly so bad, it's almost good. Keyword being almost. Number 3, the Goon, cross-check. The Goon was one of the many bizarre characters that appeared in WWE in the mid-90s. The hockey player didn't win often, but when he did, it was always anticlimactic. The Goon's finisher saw him run to his opponent on the outside and knock him down, similar to a cross-check that real hockey players would use. Not only did the finishing move look weak, but the Goon always did it on the outside, meaning he would win by countout. Yeah, that'll do you a lot of good in a championship match. Number 2, Byron Saxton, Saxtonation. You might not remember, but before he was a commentator...
Oh, I remember. I used to be a young kid watching the seasons of NXT. Who remembers the seasons of NXT? I watched them religiously as a kid. Man, I've always watched them, man. And it was interesting to me as a kid, because as a kid you're like, whoa, what's this concept of competition and voting system and stuff like that.
Byron Saxton wrestled. He made his WWE debut on NXT back when it was a competition game show. Saxton ended up getting eliminated, and when you see his finisher, you can kind of tell why. Saxtonation involved Byron grabbing his opponent, motioning for a skull-crushing finale, and then psych! No matter how much WWE shook the camera, this finisher did not look good. Dolph Ziggler summed it up the best.
Byron Saxton! Forward and back!
And number 1, Solomon Crow, Pendulum Splash. In 2015, a wrestler named Solomon Crow debuted in NXT. He had an interesting look and appeared to have some potential. Then he hit his finisher.
Look at this! Hooks the leg! And that's it!
This move was called the Pendulum Splash, and while it is the worst finisher of all time, at least it's safe to perform. Which finishers, though, are the most dangerous? To find out, watch this video.
Everybody, please go like, subscribe, and comment down below of this video. Comment any ideas for videos, trailers, movies, anything to react to, wrestling. And if you guys do not mind, if you could, my Cash App is $, capital FeelingZzz, capital ZZZ. If you could, please, if you could, I'm not pressuring anybody. If you could, I'd appreciate it very much in the current time that I'm doing it, but I'd appreciate it. Thank you guys. See you in the next video, and peace.